everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 16 of Blue Lock. Starting the new year out with Blue Lock, how about that? So, I'm pretty excited. Last episode, Naruhaya was sadly the first of Team Z to kick the bucket that we know of to not advance on past the second selection. We don't really know the results of the other competitors. The only ones we actually know that have made it to the second selection besides Naruhaya from Team Z are Isagi and Chigiri and Kunigami. Now, whether anybody else made it or not, I don't know. I'm going to be pretty sad, honestly, and you all will think I'm crazy for saying this. I'll be really sad if Raichi didn't make it. I thought about that today. I was like, man, if Raichi doesn't make it, I'll be kind of sad. And I kind of would like to see Kon do more. I'd like to see more with Kon's character. I like Gin a lot. I'd like to see him, but if Naruhaya is not here, I don't know if that's going to be a thing. And then I kind of want to see more Lemon, but I don't think we're going to get Lemon. Imamura and Inagarashi, his name has always, he's the monk, the name has always escaped me. They're fine, but they're not like my, go-to. And Batra made it, of course, right? But Batra's over with Reen and that group of extra, so I'm sure he's fitting right in. Batra's pretty extra, so that's great. So far, 4 from Team Z that we know are still in the second selection. 1 is out. The other 7 or 6 players, we have no clue about. So that is concerning to me. But anyway, I've got a little bit of a head cold, but I want to react. So I've got some tea here, and hopefully my voice will stay up. I'm like, how dare. My voice is still pretty good, so I'm like, I want to use it while I can. If I wake up tomorrow and it's like shot, then I'm going to be like, gah. But anyway, I've got a couple comments before we dive into this episode. I'm super happy that Nagi and Isagi, it worked. Isagi has become the genius of adaptability. I'm all here for it. I love it. They've added Barou to the team, which Barou's got some work to do. he's got a lot of parts and pieces that are really exciting, and I'm being appropriate with that comment, so get your mind out of the gutters. But he is a really interesting player. Like, there's a lot to Barou that you have to appreciate and admire, and he has a lot of potential. He's just very confrontational, right? And it's kind of funny, we've been comparing him and Reen. Reen and Barou are like confrontational in the opposite of ways. Reen's whole confrontation is he's like, I can't be bothered with how mediocre you are, how lukewarm you are. Get out of my way. Just let me do it and go on. And he's very tepid about it. Whereas Barou's just like, get the fuck out of my way, I'm great! And it's like, it's basically the same concept, 2 different ways of presenting it, right? Although, I will say this for Reen. In Reen's defense, which y'all won't believe this, I do think Reen is more apt to work with a team because he's like, I get this is how we play this stupid game. Barou is being very stubborn about it, like a donkey, which is ironic because that's what he keeps calling Isagi. And I'm like, sir, pot calling the kettle black. So that's interesting. But I was talking with someone on Patreon who does not want to watch Blue Lock. They're not interested at all. And I've been slowly trying to whittle my way and convert them to at least watching it because I think their opinions would be hilarious to listen to. But it's not worked out yet. But they were asking me, like, how would Isagi compare to other Ace of the Diamond characters and the protagonist? And I'm like, well, Isagi is not like the protagonist of Ace of the Diamond at all. They're kind of a combination of another character called Itsuki, who I think of, Itsuki, and another character called Mei. And I'm like, it's kind of hard to explain, but they're kind of a combination of them in the weirdest of ways. And I don't really know, and they're not really like Mei at all. They're kind of like the main character Sawamura, but not really. And it's very hard to explain it to them. And they were like, I don't know how I feel about that. I'm like, well, it's very unique for this situation. But I also saw a piece of fan art that was shared in the Discord for Blue Lock where it showed Isagi alongside the Pokemon Eevee, and I thought that was the coolest thing. I was like, yes, Isagi is Eevee. You can give him any stone you want, and he'll turn into any evolution you want. Oh my god, it's perfect. So I absolutely loved that concept, right? And then finally, Algum, they had a comment talking about the kanji for Reen's name, and it has to do with both the word dignified, but also the word cold, and not cold as in the temperature, but like as in a frigid attitude, like you're being cold to someone. And I thought that combined with the whole concept of the calling people lukewarm was really interesting. So neat. But yeah, so Speaking of Sawamura and Ace of the Diamond, I feel as if it's important that, as per usual, we plug that all too great anime for you to watch once you're done with Blue Lock. So, have a look.
Guys, I know that we would make a great team. We're like-minded, we all have great fashion sense, we all think the same, we have the same taste in men, but at the end of the day, I've got to go with a team that shows true camaraderie, true talent, true teamwork, and the ability to overcome the odds. And that's this team here with Ace of the Diamond. Yes, when you're done watching Blue Lock and you want to watch another sports anime that has all of these things, look no further than Ace of the Diamond. Now, back to the reaction.
Last week I forgot to plug it. I had to just randomly insert it into the episode. So I was like, not this week, not gonna happen. Gonna get my Ace of the Diamond ad in. Haha. Yes, but it is weird. Yeah, because Ace of the Diamond and Blue Lock are very different. We were talking about this in the Discord. I feel like this is not a spiritual successor to Ace of the Diamond at all. It's pretty far removed from it. It's more of a spiritual successor to Kuroko's Basketball, which I deeply love as well. I would say it's maybe my number 2 favorite sports anime after Ace of the Diamond. Possibly, yes. So I would say that Kuroko's Basketball is really up there, alongside Haikyuu, and Run with the Wind. But I would say that those are probably my top sports anime. But I think this is more the spiritual successor to Kuroko's Basketball, just not as superpowersy. But definitely similar in terms of the shipping and in terms of characters with rainbow hair. So, and some other similarities, but we've talked about that in the discussion. So I'm pretty excited to dive into this episode and see what all we get. I hope you all are as well. But I'm going to try to get this back over here. We're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right in to Blue Lock, episode 16, and see what we get, shall we? I'm excited. We just want to match. What are we going to follow up with? We're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's go. Well, this was an interesting episode. Yeah, this was very, very interesting. So I was expecting like a in-between episode because we just came off a win. Are we going to dive right into the next episode? I was like, okay, we'll probably take an episode off to kind of regroup, figure things out. But no, this episode was kind of crazy. These are the kind of episodes I like a lot. Not that I don't mind the action-packed episodes because those are a lot of fun, but I like talking about things. And in an action-packed episode, there's only so much you can talk about. I'm not like one of those reactors that's like talking about power scales and like the abilities over the others. I'm more into characters and development and what it says. So this episode was kind of like right up my alley because it's getting into kind of like the heart of the characters, what they're thinking, how their thoughts are like colliding with other people's thoughts. And man, there were some surprises in this episode that I wasn't thinking of. I wondered if Kunigami and Chigiri and Reo would fight against Isagi and them next. I was like, surely they will. I hadn't thought about some of the things that happened in this episode, though, and I was like, oh, of course. That all makes a lot more sense now. So we need to dive into this episode and just get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is Maid Barou. Is Barou, our king. We'll just put a little crown on him. Isn't he cute? Little Barou. And his Barou, which is funny because it reminds me of the word burrow, which means donkey, which he tends to call people. And I'm like, okay. So yeah, I like that Isagi is trying to be this voice of reason, which is funny between them. Here's the thing. Barou, it wants to be the top person in charge. They are kind of a control freak, but not a control freak over others necessarily, but a control freak over themselves. They have a very rigid and meticulous routine. That's basically it. You don't mess up the routine. It's very funny. I said OCD in the episode, but I'm like, I hesitate to like just dole out. I don't have a DMV to dole out, mental disorders and, compulsive disorders like that. I don't want to just do that. But what Barou kind of reminds me of in the weirdest ways, he reminds me of my brother. My brother is not like a meticulous person in terms of like a fitness routine, God no, anything like that. But my brother has a very strict routine, and my brother does things very meticulously in this one way. And is that one way the most efficient? No. Is that one way the most logical sometimes? No. But he's very set in his ways, and if you try to steer him off the routine, he will completely shut down and it won't work. And that's just how my brother is. So I kind of felt Isagi in this episode, because Isagi's like, well, what do I do? How do I deal with this? I need to understand him. And we'll talk about that. But for me, I was like, okay, Isagi, what you've got to do is you have to trick Barou. That's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to trick him, right? You're going to have to trick the king, right? It's the Emperor's New Clothes. You are going to have to trick the king into doing what you want him to do. You are going to have to somehow find a way to manipulate Barou without him realizing you're manipulating him. That's what you got to do. Because my brother, you kind of have to, like, in my brother's schedule, you have to notify him ahead of time, and then you also have to kind of, like, curb what you're doing to kind of go with the flow with what he's doing, and then you can kind of steer it a little way if he knows that he's going to be able to control the outcome of it. So that's my sibling manipulation. But yeah, so Isagi's got to figure out, how do I manipulate Barou to believe that he's still in charge, all the while helping us. And what I like about this is from Isagi's perspective, Isagi is realizing that he needs to create chemistry. He needs to create chemistry with strikers in order to steal their moves. Because I kind of disagree with Isagi. Isagi's like, I could never do what Barou does. And I think on a physical level, sure, is Isagi going to be as much of a beefcake as Barou is? Probably not. He said it himself, his routine's crazy. But I'm like, I think that you could do some of the things that Barou does. I think that you can adapt to that. And that's kind of his whole thing. He needs to adapt around the strikers that he's near, right? That's going to be kind of Isagi's like mainstay thing. And honestly, as far as sustainability goes, we're going to talk about that whole press conference with Ego. As far as sustainability goes, I feel like Isagi could be exactly what Ego wants. Because if Isagi can find a way to basically use his spatial awareness, use his ability to analyze people and people watch and figure out what makes them tick, and then he adapts himself around that to be able to complement them and also take the abilities of his opponents and use them against him, then yeah, he could be somebody that could adapt to any situation. Get this guy Duolingo and he can go overseas and we're going to be great. That's kind of what I feel Isagi has the potential for. If he can just, one, get the confidence that he can do it. Because Isagi's big thing is he overthinks it and second guesses himself. And it's like, no, Isagi, be more confident. That's his big downfall right now. But I think Isagi has the parts and pieces to be exactly what Ego's looking for. We just have to get him to that point, right? Over people like Barou or even Nagi, Nagi's just playing this because he's like, sure, fun, great. I love Nagi. I think, honestly, if I was a character on this show, I would be Nagi. I'm not as talented as Nagi in soccer. Hell no. I'm like Lemon. I have the talent of Lemon, the aspirations and personality of Nagi. That's where I am right now. So yeah. But I do like that Isagi tries to be this like in-between man, in between them both. It's great. And then Barou, to Barou's credit, he does like be meticulous and organized and neat. He's not a slob, which I kind of like that about his character, because if we're going with the whole king motif, what we expect is for him to be like this, oh, I'm better than you. I don't have time for you. I'm above doing this cleaning and getting things organized. You do it for me. Right? That seems like that's what you would expect with Barou. That's not the case. Barou very much will do the work. He puts in a lot of work, And he's very, like, open to, yes, I'll get this already. But he just has to have things a particular way or he doesn't know how to react. It's very much a control situation, and we don't know enough about Barou's background to know how he got to this point or why he's this point. The other mystery about Barou we don't know is how much Aquanet he uses in that hair, because I thought it was a haircut. I didn't know it was styling it. I thought it was just like the mangaka exaggerated, like, I thought he had really thick, coarse hair, and it was just like a big mohawk that was just, you know, styled. It was so coarse and thick that it just stuck up on its own. No, he has these like luscious like locks like this. I'm like, what kind of hairspray are you using, sir? How are you teasing it to Jesus? That's gonna fall out. Your receipt, you have a hairline. It's gonna keep receding if you keep teasing it like that. I'm just pointing out the obvious, sir. I thought he would look hotter with his hair down. That is not the case. He does not have the Chigiri effect going for him. So we should just ignore that. Also, I like that he calls Nagi Hasselman. And at first I was like, why do you call him Hasselman? That's a dumb nickname. But then everything Nagi says, everything you're doing is a hassle. So he's just like poking fun at him. Nagi and Barou could not be more different. They really could not. Right? But that's kind of what's funny about him. And so what I like is that Isagi doesn't dismiss Barou and call him crazy or say that he's too much to deal with. He doesn't dismiss him. Instead, Isagi's like, I want to get to know you because I'm going to have to get to know you because we're stuck in a team together and I picked you. So help me out here. Try to meet me halfway, right? I like that Isagi is just gung-ho and wanting to try to... And I love that he's like, I want to create chemistry with you, which is basically, I want to be a ship with you. But even though Isagi wants to create chemistry with his fellow teammates, he's only after one thing, man. He's got to get back to Bachara. So his goal is to get to Bachara and Reen's team. Right? That is his goal, is to get back to him. And Bachara leaves me no doubt. Bachara's like, Isagi's going to come. He'll be here. Just wait. I want to face his team. I want to face him again. Bachara having faith in Isagi, I'm like, yes, ship, yes. Still set sail. And don't get me wrong, I am all for... dog's beneath my feet. I am all for Reen and Bachara becoming friends. I would like Reen to lighten the frick up like a level and become friends with Bachara. I would like that. I think it's going to make it a lot harder for Isagi to face them if that happens. I think that's going to make it a lot more difficult, because what I think is going to happen is I think that Isagi and his team of 3 others, we'll get to that, I think that they are eventually going to make it to Bachara. And when that happens, what's going to occur is that Reen is going to have warmed up to Bachara and been like, fine, you're not that bad. I guess we can play together, whatever. And then they're going to be freaking tough, and it's going to be a really hard match, right? That's what I think is going to happen. But I don't know. There's so many things that could come out of this game that I'm really excited about that, but I'm terrified about it at the same time. And let me go ahead and tell you that when I get onto the streaming site that I look at and I click on it, because you guys know this happens. When you get on the streaming site, you go to the episode, you try not to look at the thumbnails, but they're there. All of the thumbnails for every other episode are just Isagi. So, that tells me nothing. Tells me nothing about these episodes. So I'm really excited about that, but I'm like, it's just Isagi's face on every single screen cap. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Don't know. It's just like his face, like in this angle, so you don't see anything else. You just see his face. I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't even know. I try not to look at the episode titles when I go to click on it, but your eye does wander and it sometimes sees thumbnails, but they're all of Isagi's face. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And that has me really, really excited. So yeah, having Barou around might be a hassle, but the whole I am the rule shtick is the driving force behind his ego, and I need to understand this genius if I'm going to play with him. I love that tenacity that Isagi has. It's what I love about his character. I like that he's a gung-ho guy that just wants to... He's not a bitter character, and that's one thing about Isagi. He's not bitter. He's never he doesn't go into these major emo modes. He does get to points where he doubts himself, which is frustrating because you're like, come on, Isagi. But he is pretty much like a gung-ho character, and I like that about him. And I like that he's like, I want you to train with me. And Barou's like, well, what? He's like, unless we understand each other, there won't be any more chemical reactions. Yeah. He's like, in order for us to be able to move further, we have to be able to work together. That's kind of the whole shtick here, right? So, with the Trifusion, I like the subversion of the title. We think it's about our three characters, and instead it's about Chigiri and Kunigami and Ryo working together really well, surprising no one. But it's like, what is he doing? And I like Barou's little like training regimen. He reminds me a little bit of Zantetsu in that he's kind of like has a routine. I was curious if Nagi would bring that up, but he does not. But he is a little bit like Zantetsu. Maybe it's the hair. But he's very, very intense. And I like that, Isagi's like, okay, in order for me to work together with him, I need to meet him on his level. So I'll show him my sign of respect by practicing along with him. And it kind of works because Barou lets him sit next to him at the dinner table, at the lunch table. So it's working. We're getting there. But I love Nagi throwing so much shade, being like, did this guy lose his sense of cooperation in the womb? I love Nagi so freaking much. Nagi may be one of my favorites. I like him. I like that Nagi would watch a drama in 40 minutes and Isagi would watch 2 episodes of an anime. That's really, really funny. But he's so strong because he has a very strict discipline. It's an obsession. That's what made me think of the compulsion thing. Like, it's something that he has to do. He doesn't really get around it. I like that about Barou and his character. He's not outright, I want to say he's not outright mean. I know a lot of people will be like, he calls people assholes. He's a jerk. He is a jerk. But he's not malicious with it. Like with Rin is like trying to tear down your soul whenever he speaks. He's like, get out of my life. Your life is forfeit. Like he's just, Rin comes across as he's trying to be a little bit malicious with what he says and he wants those words to cut you. Barou, it's almost like a defense of get back. Just let me do it. It's fine. It has a different meaning and I don't know how else to describe it, but I don't feel, when Barou yells, I'm just kind of like, oh, Barou. And when Rin yells, I'm like, Rin, shut up. So Isagi's like, well, in that case, I'm just going to join you. And Nagi's like, well, I can't practice by myself, so why not? I'll join you too. And he's like, I have to, in order to advance further, I have to beat the team that Batra is on. And the 3 of us will trigger a chemical reaction. I do like how we have the blue eyes of Isagi, we have Barou's red eyes, and we have Nagi's eyes that are kind of brown, but they're kind of yellowish. It's sort of like almost a primary color. It works. And then you kind of almost have secondary colors, except we don't have a green-eyed person with Chigiri's group. Not quite there. Meanwhile, so we go to this press conference where there's all these guys. Not a vagina in sight, except Anri. Bless her soul. I would call out the patriarchy, but clearly the glass ceilings haven't been broken for the soccer industry, except by Anri. Good for her. Good for her. Mm-hmm. So we have Anri there. Can we talk about Anri and Ego's like black and white motif that's going on where she has the white cardigan that is beautiful. Her hair looks great. She looks wonderful. She's too good for Ego, and Ego, I think, knows it, but he's a dumb soccer man, and what can we do with him? So Ego's just sitting there being a lanky piece of licorice, like just sitting there, being creepy as all get out, and Anri's being a goddess, and she's just like, look, as you can see in the second selection, this is what we're doing. And I like that she's talking about interpersonal relationships, self-awareness, and understanding others all improve. So yeah, so we're talking about the whole point of the second selection. I feel like this is a nice segue because it's showing what kind of soccer player we're trying to create through Blue Lock. So we're talking about interpersonal relations, which if you're only on a team of 5 or less, you really have to get to know one another to work together. Self-awareness, which I think is a really good thing because like Isagi's figuring out, you're figuring out your flaws, you're figuring out your strengths, you're figuring out how do you need to work with others, and then understanding others. Yeah, and Isagi kind of demonstrates that, or is trying to demonstrate those things in this episode. I also like that her little pointer has a little soccer ball on the end of it. That's super cute. I wish she'd whack some of these guys upside the head with them. So she's the Blue Lock supervisor. Thierry, Anri, our girl. Each player has to think for themselves to get their team playing. So it's kind of like an independence as well. You have to be able to work independently and as a team. But you know what? These assholes, the guy picking his nose and stuff, I would have whacked him over the side of the head. Their suits are ugly. Their tie suit combos are gross. Get out of here. You suck. All of you. One guy's like trying to change the channel. She's like, this is how they're able to grow into independent strikers without comparison. Like, girl's got a whole damn Prezi here, and you guys aren't giving her the time of day? Suck it. I hate it. I'm like, I wish she would get some respect, damn it. And then she, like, concludes her report or whatever. And so then this guy, who has no right to be speaking in a shirt like that, a shirt that garish, needs to have dismissed him from the room immediately. Bozo the clown here speaks up. And he's got this damn shirt with, like, cucumbers or something on it. He's a special advisor, Barasuda Hirotoshi. Yeah, I'm very curious if Hirotoshi and Ego know each other from before, because they seem to almost have, like, a little rivalry going with them, that he's the special advisor, and Ego's, like, it seems like they have a rivalry going of their own. So his argument is, even left to his own devices, a genius is still a genius. And they're like, yeah, all we want is the next star player. Ew, it showed the booger on that guy's finger. That's disgusting. Ugh. Ew, that's so gross. And they're like, hurry up and produce a genius who'll make a splash. I'm like, well, excuse you, Mr. 40-something. Why don't you get out there and do it? The fudge? How dare these people? Like, they just want something like a quick Big Mac to get out there. And then I like the Anri's like, well, we're only at the second selection. And Ego's like, he's like, I'm gonna have to interrupt you. I like that he basically pulled a Kanye, took the microphone from Anri, who's Taylor Swift, and said, I'm gonna let you have this, but I'm gonna say this first to this crowd. Basically, you old geezers are money grabbers. And he's like, how many geniuses have been crushed underfoot? So he talks about the idea. Again, what I love is they say he's a representative of Blue Lock, Ego Jinpachi. We have no clue, like, what his relation with soccer is, if he's been a pro player. We know nothing about him. And I think that's one of the mysteries about Ego that I really like, is why is he so passionate? Did he have a brother who was really popular? Like, is he going to be like a parallel? Is he going to be a parallel to Isagi? Is he going to be a parallel to Rin and Sai? Is he going to be a parallel to both? Don't know yet. But he basically brings up a good point. And he's like, you guys just get all of these, like, temporary geniuses. You get these guys that make a splash. You spend tons of money on shirt and shit. And then they go overseas for a couple years, get washed out, and then they're just mediocre. Which I'm very curious to see where Sai fits in on all of that, right? And he's like, that's not good enough. We're going to keep being third rate if we don't break the cycle. And then they're like, well, we have operation costs. Making money is necessary. I like that at that point they try to be like, oh, well, that's a good point, but what about the capitalism? It's like, yeah, and I do agree that, yeah, they are funding this giant project. They do need something to generate some revenue. I can understand that from a business standpoint, but them rushing them is like just wasting their money. And I like the Ego's like, no, let me ask you this. What is talent? I like that Ego just decides to make this a psychology project. Also, Ego is so freaking tall. He like slouches all the time. His torso is freakishly tall. His neck is freakishly long. He has these long, he's like Slender Man. Like, he has the body, I would imagine, for soccer. So I'm curious about his relationship with it. Is it a natural gift you're born with, or is it being blessed with a splendid physique? To me, those things make you nothing but a diamond in the rough. Yes. So he's like, basically having the parts and pieces is just step one. That's the first step of this system. It's not enough to make you sustainable, right? Talent is the skill to prove one's own ability. So everybody has latent talent. Everybody has latent ability. It's just, do you have the talent to prove it and demonstrate it? Someone who dreams of demonstrating the ability he believes into the rest of the world and dedicates his life to it. That is what I call a genius. So that's interesting. So I don't know if I would call Isagi by Ego standards a genius yet, because I don't think Isagi is talking about dedicating his life yet. He just wants to get to like Bachara or get to the next stage. He's not, and he thinks about having a career in it, but I don't think he's necessarily to the this is my life sort of move. If we're going by that standard, then Reen kind of matches, interestingly enough, what Ego is looking at in a genius. That seems more like Reen. But what's ironic is that Reen doesn't care about Blue Lock. So it's this interesting dynamic that there's parts of Isagi that kind of fit what I think Ego's looking for. But by Ego's definition of talent and ability, Reen kind of matches that genius persona. So interesting. I'm creating a genius in Blue Lock. And I'm dedicating my life to demonstrating it. So Ego's like, this is my talent. My talent is creating these people for you. So, and I'm staking my life on it. So get the fudge out of my way. I love Ego's dark blue navy aura. It's so creepy and like inky. It's very, very interesting. And I love that we have Anri and her eyes. She has the crazy eyes too. And then we have this guy, Hirotoshi, who's just like, well, then I can't wait to see the results, Ego-kun. Failure is not an option. Oh my God, how dramatic can we get? So I didn't imagine that we would see Barou without his hair up, that it's all down. That's interesting to know. Good to know he has long hair and he can look somewhat peaceful when he's half asleep. I like that he very much got all their stuff together. That's cute. And then we go to the other team. Chigiri and Kunigami and Reo, who are surprisingly getting along really good. They're getting along great. They have, like, it all figured out. Their coordination, everything. Do I think... I guess the problem is that Chigiri, Kunigami, and Reo... I think Reo's the weak link on their team... for more than one reason. I feel like you have Chigiri. You have Chigiri and you have Kunigami, who are all both really good in their own rights. Chigiri has the speed and Kunigami has the setup and shooting capabilities, right? Reo is the one that I think is the weak link on their team, and he has good technique and cooperation. Like, he's basically, I will do whatever you want me to do, and I'll help you however I want to do, and I'm just a good player overall. But he's not amazing. I don't think Reo has that, like, one special technique that sets him apart from the others, like Chigiri and Kunigami, unless we find it out in this next battle, right? What's interesting is that Chigiri and Kunigami, they would choose Nagi. I wasn't ready for that. And Reo will, he says he won't, but he will because he's a damn yandere, right? He says he doesn't want to choose Nagi, but I think if push came to shove, he would take him back. Let's be real. The guy was pulling apart toothbrushes, wondering if he'd like him or not, I kind of wondered, but I didn't expect them to immediately just be like, no, not Isagi. Not Barou. I mean, Barou makes sense. They wouldn't want him. Of course not. Even though I like Kunigami tries to be rational about it. And he's like, well, Barou is good at this. And Isagi is good at that. But Nagi's clearly the best of the three. So, because they haven't seen what Isagi's capable of in the last few games. So, yeah. I'm just kind of floored. Because it's kind of one of those situations where you expect your, Isagi is the teammate from Team Z, and he's not the one that they pick. And I'm like, oh. So, if they win, which they very well could, if they win this game, they could pick Nagi and go. Or, if they win and they see Isagi do something really incredible, and they're like, oh, we hadn't seen him do that before, they might change their mind and pick Isagi. And that would kind of go along with what Reo wants. Reo wants to leave Nagi behind and be like, well, you see how you like it. Even though Nagi's like, I didn't mean anything bad about leaving you behind. It's just, what else was I going to do? And so, I could see them, like, changing their mind and picking Isagi if they see him do something really cool. Or they could pick Nagi and then Isagi and Barou have to do something different. I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I don't know what we're going to do. That's, if they lose, this whole season's gonna be really interesting if they lose this round and Isagi doesn't get picked and he has to go back down to square one with Barou. That's gonna be really hard, and I don't know how I feel about that. So, but yeah, they're like, we should get through all the stages. And I like the fact that they want to pick a good team to face because they want to get a good player. Now, Rayo bothers me with their team. I think Rayo could be the reason they lose because Rayo is not in the right mindset at all during this game. Rayo is too concerned with RuPaul's Best Friend race rather than RuPaul's Drag Race. Because honestly, again, like I said, this show reminds me a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race, particularly because it's like, at this point in the second selection, we're kind of like in All-Stars mode. This reminds me of All-Stars. Like, in the All-Star seasons, the queens themselves vote who gets kicked off the show. And some queens try to form alliances. They try to be like, hey, I'll be on your team and I'll be with you. If you save me, I'll save you, sort of thing. And other queens are like, no, I'm going to get rid of the most talented person because I want to advance to the next stage. And that doesn't really apply to this particular sport or this series. But I think the problem with Rayo is way too concerned about Nagi. Nagi didn't think anything was wrong. They were like, hey, buddy, old pal, how's it going? Rayo's like, I've not slept because of you. And if you look at Rayo throughout this episode, he looks like he hasn't slept. He looks like he's lost sleep. He looks a mess. The problem is Nagi's like, I just want to, pick Rayo because I said we would play soccer together. And it's like, and Rayo doesn't even know that. That's the problem. So I see that if anything goes wrong, it's Rayo that's going to be the problem. And the fact that Rayo has marked Isagi, I'm like, okay, if Isagi turns this around, it's going to be because he's marking Rayo, right? Rayo's whole problem is that he's so focused on revenge against Isagi of all people. He's trying to make this a love triangle when it's not a love triangle. Isagi and Nagi are not in a ship together. They're like just bros. And Rayo's just like, you left me for him. How has he been treating you? Have you been sleeping in the same bed? And Nagi's like, no, I've been sleeping on the top bunk. He's on the bottom. Which I don't know what that says. Barou sleeps on his own. Barou could do any, who knows? But I think Rayo is going to be, if they lose, it's going to be because of Rayo, is what I think. I think if Kunigami's team loses, it's because of Rayo. Now, Shigiri likes the tea. Shigiri's like, oh, you're intense. I like it. And for a hot second, I'm like, am I shipping Rayo and Shigiri as like a rebound ship? No, because Kunigami and Shigiri, they're pretty much a ship, which is going to make this heartbreaking if Isagi's team wins and it ends up breaking up Kunigami and Shigiri, which could very well happen. And I'm like, oh, the fudge you say, right? I'm so intrigued, right? So yeah, genius of adaptability. My one thing is like, okay, Isagi, you've been told that you're a genius of adaptability. Figure it out. Let's do this. What we doing? I do love, though, when Isagi sits next to Barou. Anytime off the field, like on the field, Isagi looks like this intense walking praying mantis. But off the field, like when he's in the kitchen, he just looks like a little lamb. He's like, oh, hi. He's like, hey, can I sit next to you? Like, looks like the most innocent little bean. Also, in some of the official merchandise pictures that people have shared in the Discord, his, like, animal representation is a shrimp. Which I'm like, a shrimp? Really? Isagi? A shrimp? I mean, they're delicious, but what? Is he going to evolve into a lobster? I don't know. But I guess, are shrimp adaptable? Is that why his spirit animal is a shrimp? I've never seen a character represented by a shrimp as an animal before. That's so weird to me. Okay, we'll go with it. But he's like, my next target is the selfish king. And again, because Barou, Isagi's worming his way into Barou's heart, he's like, sure, knock yourself out. He's like, why not? And so he's like, hey, what's your ideal play style? And Barou's like, just pass the ball to me. That's pretty much it. I'm like, okay. And so Isagi's trying to figure out like what kind of soccer Barou wants to do. And he's like, I just want to score. The end. That's it. And he's like, sure, but that's why you lost. Remember? And he's like, no, why I lost was because of Nurahaya and he didn't let me score. And if he had, we would have won. And Isagi's like, well, that's just, So I feel in order to connect to Barou, Isagi has to find a way to be able to help Barou get to the goal to score. Because Barou's not going to pass to you. That's just not going to happen. So it's like, okay, if Barou's not going to pass, I have to find a way to give him the ball in the best spot to be able to score. That's essentially it, right? It's very much like, which is hilarious because Suabe voices both characters. Almine in Kuroko's Basketball is kind of the same way. Almine doesn't pass anybody. He's a ball hog. He wants to, the only one who can beat me is me. Barou and Almine have very similar ideologies and personalities. So I'm sure Suabe was like, Almine 2.0, can do. But although Almine is much more sensual than Barou, and Almine would never be a maid, but that's beside the point. I think that what Isagi is going to have to do is, if Isagi is a donkey, according to Barou, that's what he's calling him, what he's going to have to do is find a way to get him to the goal. If he's going to be a donkey, then by all means, Isagi's going to have to find a way to transfer Barou to the goal to score. That's going to be how it has to work, right? And if that can't happen, then Nagi is going to have to be there. Nagi's going to have to be there to try to be able to finagle his way in to get the ball if something happens and Barou gets blocked. So I feel like there's a way they can make it work. But Isagi, I view Isagi as kind of like the conductor, right? I view Isagi kind of like the conductor of the symphony. He's the one that orchestrates where everybody's going to go and what's going to happen. And that kind of ties in with him smelling the goal, him, figuring out where things can be placed, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like that's what Isagi can be good at. So, but poor him. He's like, I want to win through my goals. That's it. We win with my goals. If you were looking to win by team play, then you should have chose the other guy. And he's like, but your skills are better. And he's like, then do as I say. Poor Isagi. I feel bad for him, where he's just like, what is up with that guy? And he's like, but he won't win since he has no sense of cooperation. He's a genius with a wasted potential. So I wonder if Isagi's going to try to show Barou that he's wasting his potential and that he's a genius of a wasted genius. I wonder if that's going to happen. I really like Isagi's hair in the bath. I like the way that he parts it there. It's really good. What the fudge are they feeding these kids, though? When did this become Baki? I don't know a lot about Baki, but my brother watches Baki, and I've seen like one clip of it, and they're all like jacked up like this. How are they 18? Where are the steroids? Ego, have you been dishing out steroids illegally in this food? No, there is no 18-year-old that looks like that. Not really. I'm like, holy shit. I also like the different color of, they have like the black Blue Lock is body soap and they have conditioner and shampoo. The merchandising they could do with this, I tell you. But then I like that Shigiri has like this like ripped body, but then the best hair. It's like, yes. And then Nagi is just swimming in the hot tub, which again, I can relate to Nagi because I like swimming in hot tubs too. When I was a kid, I did it all the time. But then of course, Barou, who comes in looking like a freaking Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, is like, don't swim in the public bath. Why is there a towel in here? Why are you getting your germs? Also, Barou's hair is like longer than mine. I'm like, how does he get that all up? What? How is this possible? I'm like, dude, he reminds me of like a character from Dragon Ball Z. He reminds me of Android 17. That's who he reminds me of. And I like that Nagi's like, I'm a ninja. And then he goes down and does like the ninjutsu pose. Looks like Kakashi blowing bubbles. And I love that Barou's like, you're getting your spit everywhere. Gross. That is hilarious. I freaking love him. And I love Chigiri. Chigiri's so beautiful. I love Chigiri's just like, what is happening here? As he drags him out of the pool. Love it. And so he's like, well, who are you going to face? And then we see Reo, like, legs spread, ready to show Isagi up. Oh my god. Hilarious. Hilarious. And then poor Nagi. Nagi's like, hey, best buddy, old pal. Hey. He's like, I trained so much after that. And he goes to smack him. That's the one shot of Barou that looks good with his hair down. The one. And then Reo's like, we're enemies now, Nagi. You and you didn't choose me, so I'm gonna crush you. And Nagi's like, what did I do? I like that, like, Nagi full on wants this to be a ship, and Rayo's like, no, it can't be. I'm like, you are so yandere and crazy, Rayo. I love you, but dude, I don't know if we should entrust Rayo with the billions of dollars of the family's company. I think if one wrong thing happens, he might throw it all down the drain. I don't know. Nagi, maybe you need to stay out of this rich man's life. But I want to ship them so badly, so it's so hard. And then I like that everybody's eyes get all serious, being like, do you want to play us? And Isagi's like, yeah, let's do it. So they have a day left until the match. And they're trying to figure out what to do. And it's not too great. Like, their team skills are not wonderful. And Isagi's like, well, what the hell do we do? He's like, we have weapons, but how are we going to beat them? He's like, we're lacking in one area. So, Isagi, if they win, he wants Chigiri. Isagi's like, well, let's get Chigiri because he's the fastest one, and he will make up for the deficits that we have on our team. But Barou wants Kunigami because, oddly enough, he's like, well, Barou could help set me up. Barou would be great for this. We could totally use Barou. And I'm like, interesting. And then Rayo, Nagi wants Rayo because he's like, we're a ship. I love that Nagi's not giving up on Rayo. He's like, I don't know, what else do we do? So that's going to be interesting. I don't know. They haven't really come to a consensus, but this team has. So what do we do about that? I don't know. I'm going to be really, really interested if Kunigami and Chigiri and Rayo's team wins. Will they pick Nagi and leave Isagi and Barou? Because if that happens, then I don't see how Isagi can make it to the end against Bachara. I don't see how that's going to happen. Because then I think you've got your upper players. Who's going to join Isagi and Barou that's going to be able to help them make it out and make it 3 more rounds? You know? But then the question is, if they win, they're not picking Rayo. I mean, Nagi wants to, but they're not going to pick Rayo. But then who do they pick? Do they pick Chigiri or Kunigami? And then what happens to Rayo and whoever's left? What do they do? Who do they get on their team? I don't know. I genuinely, this episode kind of makes me excited for this game, for this match, because I'm like, I don't know which team will win. Logically, we're on episode 16, we have 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, we have 8 episodes left. You would think we would want to have Asagi's team win, but then who do they pick? What happens to the 2 left behind? I don't know. And I'm really excited because I don't know. So, I'm curious, y'all. I'm very curious indeed. And so, yeah. I like that Barou mainly wants to choose Kunigami because he could pass him the ball, which is hilarious. He doesn't even consider the fact that Kunigami would not want to pass him the ball. But yeah, so here's the thing. I like that Rayo wants to mark Isagi to put him in his pocket and prove Nagi he made the wrong choice. I'm like, I don't think you're playing this game for the right reasons. And Kunigami tries to say, make sure this isn't involving your emotions, right? And so, like, who are we going to pick? Now, Kunigami says Isagi's weapon would be great if we can make it fit our team. And Barou's individual skills are appealing, but going purely on attributes, I'd say Nagi. So that's kind of the crazy thing about this series, is that they all started out on this team together, but it is kind of every man for himself. How are we going to build the best team? This ain't RuPaul's Best Friend race. We've got to pick people based on their skills. And at this point, all in the flashback of Isagi, all Kunigami was seeing was the direct shot that Isagi could do. And he's like, if Isagi can adapt to us, he'd be great. But if not, then he's kind of not going to work. So I'm going to be interested to see if they change their mind. If they change their mind and pick Isagi if they win. or if they still go with Nagi. And they've already scored a goal, so you guys got to figure out fast what we're going to do. I don't know. And the fact that Rayo doesn't want to pick Nagi just so that he can suffer like him is interesting. What is also interesting is the fact that Rin doesn't care. Rin is just practicing soccer. He's just practicing his shot. He could care less who they face. Aryu and Toki are trying to get people to face them, and none of these other squads want to. They're like, nope, we don't want to fight you because we'll probably lose, and then one of us will have to leave. And so what's interesting is that for Aryu and Toki, they don't really care who they face. They just want to face somebody, get the fifth person, and advance to the next, past the second selection. They don't care. Bachara wants to face Isagi because he wants to get Isagi. He wants to beat him. But my thing is, does he want to beat him and take him back into their team? Because would Rin and then pick him a second time? Or does Bachara want Isagi to come, beat him, and choose him? And the question is, if Isagi beats Bachara's team, would he pick Bachara or would he pick Rin? That's the big question. If we're talking about ships and we're talking about Airman for himself, if Asagi's team gets it, then the logical choice would be to pick Rin because he's the best player there. But then you have your loyalty to Bachara. And is Bachara counting on Isagi picking Rin? Or thinks he's going to pick him because they're besties? It opens up this big old can of worms, right? Because it's really, you just don't know, like, what are these characters going to end up picking? Are they following logic? Are they following their brains? How does this work? But yeah, I love that Bachara, he's like, and then Toki's like, what if they don't make it here? And Bachara's like, oh no, he's going to make it. He's like, Isagi will get here. I love it. And then Asagi's like, I can't lose. If I want Bachara back, then I can't get stuck here. So maybe he would pick Bachara if he made it. I don't know. I don't know. That's interesting, right? I just don't know. What I do want, though, is that Bachara is trying to, like, break down the wall around Rin to get Rin to play with him. Because Bachara is like, I want to play with the best. I want to, be teammates with the best. So come on. I like that Bachara is kind of doing the same thing to Rin as Isagi is doing to Barou. They're trying to, like, whittle their way into their hearts. Do I ship Bachara and Rin? No. They are astrologically incompatible to the max. No. But, and I ship Isagi and Bachara too much for that. But I do like the idea that Bachara wants to become a better player, and that means getting along with Rin. And Rin, who is like this cold little frigid popsicle, is like, I want you to leave, go away. And Bachara's like, you're fun, let's keep playing. I love that. I love Bachara's spirit. I want him to break down that wall and like melt the frost around Rin. I want Bachara to be the little bumblebee that melts the frost and lands on the little flower that is Rin. I want that. Pollinate that shit. So yeah, he's like, if you play with me, I promise you'll have fun. And he has like the crazy eyes. Yeah, I want that. And that'll just make that game even harder when we get to it. So yeah. But yeah, everybody's working together. And of course, they score a goal first. But Nagi's like, well, that means that he's like, I'm fired up. And Isagi's like, I want to crush him. It's probably good that they scored that first goal like they did. Because that means that Isagi's like, okay, they're not messing around. We can't mess around either. So we just need to play them and win. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Meanwhile, in the additional time, King Barou Maid Cafe, this is nightmare fuel and is the creepiest thing in the world, and I want to kill it with fire. No more. No more of cutesy. That face with Barou, no thank you. Nope. I'm with Barou. Get it out of here. No. And then when they do the idea of Barou being like the swearing cafe and he's just pouring ketchup over them, it reminds me of that restaurant Dick's Last Resort where they're just mean to you. It probably would commercially be a success. What they should be doing is taking all this footage of all of them like hanging around and making like real world episodes of it and selling, marketing that. That's what they should be doing. But yeah. All right. There is so much that could happen in this game and could come of this game. And I think that's what has me the most excited is to see how is this going to go? Who's going to win? Who's the player that's going to get picked? It's only going to be one of them. So what team of 4 is potentially going to face Reen and the others? Now, there's 2 ways I think this could go. If you had Chigiri, Kunigami, and Reo, and let's say they picked Nagi, and they went up and tried to face... Because right now we have Reen, Bachara, we have Arbat. We have Reen, we have Bachara, we have Aryu, and we have Toki, whatever his name is. Toki. We have Arbat over here. Would they play them? Probably not. But that would leave Isagi and Barou, and I don't think that that would go over well at all. So the question is, if we had Isagi, Barou, Nagi, and who would be the person that would best fit the bill to play against Arbat? Well, Toki has this crazy strength and stuff, so probably him and Barou. And then Aryu, that would be the question of Bachara and Nagi facing each other would be fun, and Reen and Isagi. So who would face Aryu? Well, I would say Chigiri would be my pick because they both have beautiful hair. And you have also Chigiri's very flexible and very fast. So I feel like Chigiri would be a good match for Aryu in terms of speed versus like the flexibility and agility. I think that would be a good matchup. Also, Chigiri versus Toki would be good, and Aryu versus Barou or Nagi would be interesting. So I think that I would pick Chigiri too. I think I'd be with Isagi. I would pick Chigiri out of them. Not that I don't love Kunigami or Reo. I do. But I think Kunigami is too similar to Barou in terms of what they can do. And I think that Reo is just the weak link of that team anyway. So, but then I feel bad for Kunigami and Reo because they'll have to keep fighting their way to the top. What do you do? I don't know, y'all. I don't know. But we're going to have to find out. So that's what I'm most excited about, and I can't wait. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all think of this matchup and this craziness. But this was an amazing episode, and I'm super excited about it. So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Blue Lock. Bye! Wow, so for an in-between episode, that has given us a lot to talk about.